Welcome everyone. This is Malio's All About Deduplication webinar. I hope everyone is enjoying Mylio Photos and thank you for joining us. Here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the basics of deduplication. We'll explain what is considered a duplicate. We'll talk about the user interface, do a walkthrough and explain the different parts of the interface. And we'll also talk about how when you find and check the duplicates you want, you can either delete them or move them, and we'll explain the difference between the two. On part 2 of the webinar, we're going to talk about advanced features, how to use filters for your deduplication exercises, how to manage the Autocheck parameters so that you don't have to check things by hand and let the software do it, and how to handle deletion errors. And then we're going to leave some time at the end of the session for some Q&A. By the way, I'm JC Figueroa. I'm the customer success lead at Malio. I'm an avid underwater photographer, and I have been teaching technology of all kinds my entire career. I will be leading the webinar today as a host, and we have a very special guest, Paulina Sharabarina. She's one of our test engineers, and she led the effort of testing this deduplication software. We spent a lot of time building this feature. It's been almost 2 years in the making. And not only was the development team had to work really hard, the test team had to work really hard and build a lot of different scenarios in which duplicates could happen and how the software had to handle it. So she knows the software pretty intimately, and I'm glad that she was able to join us today. She's an outdoor adventurer and photographer, and she's always showing really cool pictures during our company meetings. So she shares the same passion for photography that we all have. Let's talk about a couple of housekeeping things that you should know. Number one is that you should use the Q&A feature in Zoom to ask us questions. I see that everyone is telling us hi on the chat, and that's great. Hello from all kinds of places: Alabama, Canada, San Francisco, Texas, Seattle. When you have questions, however, we ask that you use the Q&A feature, and you can find that on your Zoom toolbar. There's a little Q&A icon. When you click on it, the window similar to the one on screen will pop up. If you ask us your questions there, we have Michael let me try that again. We have Michael Dearworth and Tyler Sharp. They're members of our support team, and they have graciously donated their time today to help us answer some questions live. They'll also mark questions to be answered by Paulina and myself at the end of the session during our Q&A. So if you have something you want to know, throw the question up there. Maybe we'll cover it during the presentation, but if we don't, we'll address it at the end, or Michael and Tyler will type the answer live as well. All right. Also, the webinar is being recorded. That means that anything that shows up on the screen, my video, Paulina's video, and all the sound is being recorded. We will have a replay of the webinar available in our community forum. Also, if you register for the webinar, you'll get an email with a link to the recording, but you can look for the recording tomorrow on the community main feed and be able to rewatch this, and it'll stay in the community forever. So you'll always be able to go back and watch it again. All right, so let's jump right into it. Let's talk about deduplication and the basics of deduplication, starting with what is considered a duplicate. Then we'll talk about the user interface. I'll walk you through it, and then deleting versus moving. So I'm going to switch over here to Malio, and what you're seeing is my personal Malio library. And there's 2 ways to access the deduplication feature in Malio. From the Organize menu, you can click the Find Duplicates, and that will launch the deduplication feature. You can also go to the dashboard under Actions and click Find Duplicates. That's my preferred way. I always go there. I tend to forget that those menus are up there, so I do everything right on the screen. So when I click Find Duplicates, Malio takes me to the deduplication screen. And if you're new to the feature, if you haven't used it before, the thing that's going to happen the first time you run it is that you're going to get this blue education panels. And if you skipped them before, we're going to go over them right now because it is the best place to understand what Malio considers a duplicate and what is not considered a duplicate. So when I hit next here, Malio tells me what duplicates are detected by Mylio Photos. So exact files only, meaning the file is the exact same size and the exact same resolution. And we determine this not by the file name, not by the location of the file, but by looking at the actual data. Malio does a function called a hash that basically looks at all the bits of data and compares them. And if the results are identical for one file or another, Malio knows that those files are the same files. The files can have the same name, but be in different locations. They can be files with different names. They can be files that have different metadata associated with them because we're doing the hash against the actual image and not against the metadata of the file. The things that Malio does not consider duplicates and is not detected is files that are not exact matches. So for example, you might have the exact same photo, but one is higher resolution than the other one, or is a different size because more compression has been applied to one of the files. Malio is not going to consider those duplicates because in reality that they're not duplicates. They're the same photo, but in different size and resolution. Also similar files that look the same to the naked eye, but maybe they were taken a fraction of the second away from each other. So they might look identical to a human, but in reality, the photos are not duplicates. The data in them slightly different. This education panels show you a little bit more information. We're going to talk about the filter bar when Paulina joins us on the second part. So I'm going to skip that for now. And I want to let you know that if you click this checkbox, the next time you run deduplication, those blue education panels will not come up again. I leave them on because I like to remind myself what I'm doing, and I show it all the time. All right, so I'm going to click done. And now we have the deduplication interface here. And the first thing that Malio shows me is that it has found 413 sets, and that those sets have 866 files within them. So what is a set? A set is a group of duplicates. So this first row here is a set. It's the same photo, is in my library twice. The files appear to be exactly the same. If I go to the second row, again, it's telling me the names of the file. Notice that I have a slightly different file name, and Malio is telling me that there's conflicting data. It's telling me that the first file has a rating of 3 stars, whereas the second file does not have a rating at all. And as I go through the photos, Malio is highlighting those differences. It's telling me where the files live. If I scroll way down, I can see that in this set, I have actually 3 photos that are the same. One has been turned into black and white, but because it was done with non-destructive editing, the underlying file is the same, and so on and so forth. So lots of duplicates. I have 413 duplicates, 866 files. And there's a number of things that I can do right here in this window, in the sets portion of the user interface to interact with these files. I can click on a file and the information panel will get populated, and I'll be able to look at information about this file, like what folder it lives in. Sorry, my video turned off there for a second. Let me turn that back on. What import source, like how did this photo get into my library? All of that is available there. If I click on the other file, it's showing me the information for that other file. I can also double click on any one file and the photos go up in single view mode. And you'll notice that down at the bottom, I can switch which photo I'm looking at. You'll notice that this is the same photo, but one photo was rotated where the other one was not. So it's the same file, one has been rotated. at any time, I can mark those photos for deletion. So I can check that and say, okay, I have 2 of the same one. I don't want to keep this one. I can also go back and do that checking of boxes right here in the top portion, in the main view of the user interface. So lots of information here. Now, another area of the user interface that we're going to discuss during the advanced session is the filter. So if I turn on that little funnel, turn it blue, that opens up my filters options. And that's where I can add a filter. And that's going to allow me to, instead of looking at my entire library, which is what Malio is doing right now, it's looking at all 30-some thousand photos in my library and it's telling me, hey, I found 413 sets of duplicates and there's like 866 files. So what do you want me to do with them? If I only wanted to look at one folder or only at photos that match a certain category, I can apply a filter and only look for duplicates within that parameter. All right. I see a question. How did I get them to show up larger? I just double click on the image. Double clicking on the image takes it into full mode or single view. And then I can click on one image or the other. All right. The next part of the interface is the auto check. Notice I only have 413 sets, but that's still a lot. If I had to go through all of these photos and mark which one I wanted to keep or delete, that would take me a while. And in some scenarios, I've seen people that found thousands and thousands of duplicates in their libraries. So doing that checking work by hand would take a long time. So we don't want you to have to work that hard. So part of the deduplication feature is an auto check parameter. And when you click auto check, which is down here on the bottom right, when you click that, Malio opens up a window with all the different parameters that you can use for determining which of the duplicates get selected for deletion or for being moved out. And there's lots of parameters here. The position of the parameters, sorry, I changed this earlier. By default, they're all going to be turned on. And we did a lot of testing and took a lot of time organizing these parameters in a default mode that is going to be the most helpful in most situations. So for the most part, if you leave the defaults the way they are, and you can always click this restore defaults, it's going to work really well. And it's going to check the version of your duplicates that you really should be getting rid of. Things like which one has a higher rating, or if one has been edited, you're more likely to want to keep the edited version versus the version that has not been edited. So that's what these parameters are all about. And we're going to discuss them in more detail during the second part of the webinar. But for now, I'm just going to run auto check. And when I run it, what Mylio Photos is going to do is it's going to go in there and it's going to mark my photos for deletion. Notice in this set, I had 9 of the same photo. So it looked at all of them, realized that this one had the most data and aggregated all the data into that one, or it's going to merge all the data into that one. And it's going to get rid of 8 files there that were duplicates of the same photo. And as I scroll through, it's doing the same for all of the photos. So now I have a series of files or a series of sets of duplicates where one or more photos in a set has been marked for deletion. So now the next step is simply to just delete them. And I have 2 options. I can delete the photos that are checked. And what Malio is going to do is it's going to go find those files. Whatever the original versions of those files are, is going to delete them. If you have them in multiple places, like if you have the good habit of having multiple vaults set up in your system, is going to delete the originals from all of the vaults. It's also going to get rid of the previews and the thumbnails, but it's also going to merge the metadata. Now, if you're paranoid, like I am, and you're like, okay, do I really want to delete files? I never like deleting pictures. Well, you can move them so that they don't show up in Malio anymore, but they're in some secret folder in a hard drive that you keep in a drawer. Or maybe you just want to move them out of Malio look around your library, make sure that you're comfortable with what has been done, and then later on you delete them. If I were to hit or click on the move checked, Malio gives me the option of merging metadata. That means if I have done any changes to any photo, so like I have two versions of the same photo, one has a geotag in it, the other one doesn't, but the alternate has a face tag on it that the first photo does not. Well, I don't want to lose the face tag that I did, and I don't want to lose the geotag that I did. So what Malio is going to do is, if this box is checked, it will actually merge the metadata on the remaining file and delete the other file. So you don't lose any metadata and you keep only one version of the file. Because I chose move, I can pick the location where these files are going to move. And what's really important here is that you don't put those files in a folder that Malio is aware of, right? Don't put them in a folder where they're going to end up back in Malio, because Malio will scan them and re-import them. Put them outside of your Malio library folder or outside your vault folders in your hard drives. So you just pick that destination and hit open, and then Malio will start a moving process. Alternatively, if I hit delete, I still get the option of deleting the data. Malio tells me how much space I'm going to save. And when I click delete, it will go and delete those files. Now, it's not going to delete them immediately. What it's going to do is it's going to queue up a job, a project to do so. And you'll see that in the activities window, there'll be an activity here saying deleting duplicates, and it'll give you an estimate of how long it takes. And again, depending how large your library is, how many files you have in your duplicate sets, and how many vaults you have, because Malio will have to go to each vault and delete it from everywhere. That job might take a little bit of time, so just be patient, let it go through its thing, let it run through completion. All right, so that's the basics. We did part one. Yay us. So now we're gonna have Paulina take over, and we're gonna talk about part two, which is all about deduplication advanced features. She's going to talk about filters. She's going to go deeper into the Autocheck parameters, and she's going to show us some neat tricks. So Paulina, I'll stop sharing my screen so that you can share yours.
Okay, hello JC, and hello everyone. And thank you for letting me do this geeky session, like the geeky part of the advanced features of dedupe. So I love this feature, and I hope I could help our users to read their library of the duplicates that they have. I saw some messages in the chat that then some people had like 14,000 duplicates and et cetera, et cetera. And I hope the features that I'm going to talk about would actually be helpful, at least to not confuse people, like when they see so many, so they can process it in smaller chunks. So let me share my screen now, share my Mylio. So right here, I do not have as many duplicates as JC did. This is not my real library, and I don't want to do some deletion operations on my real library. So I just created this library just for this tutorial today. So our first topic is the filter. So when you see so many duplicate set, like it could be thousands, right? 1,000 files or thousands of sets, and you don't really want to delete them all at once. So you might want to use the filter to just kind of narrow down what you see on the screen, so you'll see fewer results. So you might want to do process rated by 5 stars first, or media that's labeled, or media that was from just last year, right? So another very useful feature in amongst the filter is that you can filter for a specific folder, and it is really helpful when you organize your entire library and then you import this folder that is just a mishmash of all your photos, and it could be media from any years, or it could be media from your mobile device camera roll, right? So you would just add a folder filter here. So I'm going to, for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to use a filter that's called not organized. So when I add this folder, I hope we can see my screen. I'm going to move this a little here. So when I when I filter for not organized folder, it's important to understand the scope of the filter. And so Mylio has this two options for the scope. It's entire library and within results. So I know that these things might sound very confusing, and I'll try to do my best to explain them. So let's start by, I'll try to give you two explanations and see which one works best for you. First, I'll go through how our designers envisioned it after they did a lot of user testing and came up with this wording of entire library and within results. So when you have a folder, for example, so we set a folder filter, not organized, and you change the scope to within results. What you actually see is that Mylio will compare every photo in this folder, not organized, to every other photo and see if they're duplicates.
In that folder, right?
Right, within the folder only.
So that's why your sets went down to only 5.
Exactly. Now we reduce the number of on stage even more. So I hope that makes sense. So when we change the scope to entire library, so what happens, we see fewer media and, more media and more sets as well. So what happens in this case is that Mylio still uses the same basic set of photos from this folder that we filtered for, but it's not comparing the photos within the folder only, but it's comparing those photos to all the other photos in the entire library. And that's why here we see in the first set, right here, we have this media that's stored in a folder called not organized. And so does this media, but this media is stored in a different folder. So that's a very helpful filter to use if you want to dedupe just a specific folder.
So Paulina, people could, instead of deduping their entire library, they could go one folder at a time, right? If they have thousands and thousands of duplicates, instead of doing all at once, they could go, okay, I'm gonna do my Apple Photos folder and see how many duplicates I find there, and then move from one folder to the next.
Yes, exactly. That's a very useful feature, and that's how users can use it. So the next, I'd like to give you my explanation, and for that, I will remove the folder filter.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'll do is I'll add a rating filter. And when I do that, I will change scope to within results. And so let's see what we see here now. So I will open info panel. And when I select the media, I will expand the rating bar as well. So right here in this set that we see on the screen, this media and this media and this media as well all have a 5-star rating. And so this is what it means to have within results scope, in my understanding, that every single media in every single set that's returned on stage has to match the filter that you set. In this example, it's a 5-star rating. So let's change it to entire library and see what we get. So now we have more sets appear on stage. And in this example right here, this media has a 5-star rating, but the other media has a 4-star rating. So when you change the scope to the entire library, it becomes less strict. So at least one media in a set has to match the filter now. Another media can have other ratings or labels or whatever your filter is. So this is to outline our filter.
And you can combine filters too, right? So you could say media from this folder that is tagged yellow, go find any duplicates against my entire library, right?
Right.
So it doesn't have to be just one filter parameter. You can keep adding filters.
Yeah, in this case, it might not render any results, but yes, you can definitely do that. So right here in that folder, we have multiple media that are rated 4 stars, and we can just dedupe those. And you can also add multiple folders as well. So let's let one folder not confuse you. You can add multiple folders, and you can also remove them one at a time.
Great.
Or you can remove them all by saying clear filter. Okay, so another part of the filter that's very useful is the custom filter. And here you can type a lot of different things. And if you want to learn in depth about it, I'm sure there is an article in our Mylio manual on the website that can tell you more. But it basically works similarly to our search feature. The one type of keywords that I want to show you today is a lost original keyword. So let's, for the sake of this, I want to scroll through my duplicates and see and find any of the media that are marked this way. So this media has this scary red wording. It says deletion recommended because it might be corrupt or incomplete. And the reason this happens is because this media is very likely lost original. And what that means is that Mylio somehow lost the original of this media. So which means it's no longer in Mylio, but it still contains thumbnails or previews, right? So this can happen for a number of reasons, but we don't really want to go into all of those in-depth complexities. But one user case scenario when, let's call it a user error, you can delete a file in the file system, thinking that you still have a copy in Mylio, but Mylio actually does not have a copy on any other device. So it will keep the media, but it will not have the original. So when this happens—
Paulina, this happens to me all the time. But what I do is I take a photo at the grocery store of a price tag, or you know, my wife sends me to buy something, and I take the photo and I text her the photo, and then Malio notices that I have that photo in my phone. So it ingests it. But then I delete the photo from my phone before that original file has been moved anywhere else in Malio, and I instantly create a lost original.
Yes, I've seen that happen.
That's usually where I get them from. So just throw another example in there.
Yeah, that's a good one. Thank you, JC. And so some users on the forum actually wondered on how to see all of the duplicates that have lost originals. Mm-hmm. And there is actually a way, and that's exactly how you do it with a custom filter. So you simply type lost original : true and hit enter. And this is actually a little issue that I found today in Mylio. We want to see the entire library to see the results, right? So here we have two duplicate sets that have lost originals in one or more media in the set. So when I hit Autocheck and allow Mylio to select duplicates for deletion, those files will always be prioritized for deletion. And you can actually not change that. Of course, you can manually unselect them if you choose to keep a lost original, but I don't think of a reason where you would want to keep a media without an original in Mylio over a media that has the original.
Yeah.
So yes, let's undo the check here. And remove all this filter. So, okay, so what is the next part of our agenda? The next part, I'd like to discuss managing Autocheck parameters and what it really does and how it works. So Autocheck parameters and modifying them is basically modifying how Mylio prioritizes the deletion. Prioritizes selecting files for deletion. So there is a default list that JC already showed you earlier. And you can make various changes to this list. So you can uncheck certain options in the list. You can reorder them by dragging this little handle up and down. And when you make changes, you can always restore defaults. So I believe there is 13 options here, and when you reorder them, Mylio will respect that order and run all of your every single duplicate set against every single option in this list and see if it matches this option or not. So, for example, I actually prepared a little data set for this. Let me remember what the name of this data set was. So I'm going to filter for a folder here that's called Autocheck Parameters. So right now we only see four duplicate sets on stage, and each of them represent. This wasn't supposed to be here. Represent a simple option, a single option from the Autocheck Parameters list. So, for example, this media has a higher rating over that media. In this set, this media has an XMP, this one doesn't. And in this set, there's a label and no label. And in this example, the media appear to be the same. There's no conflict in data, but this one is stored in a folder that has fewer folders in the path. So it only stored in 2 folders, right? And this one is stored in 3 folders deep. So there's an extra folder. So when you click Autocheck and make sure you have defaults on and run it, what we see is that lower rated media is selected over the one with the higher rating. Same goes for XMP. Media with no label is chosen for deletion, and media with a longer folder path is also preferred for deletion. So what you can do here is you can always modify this by changing lower rating to a higher rating, for example. So assuming you work backwards and you like lower rating on your media than the higher rating. I don't know why.
Yeah, so 1 star for me is better than 5 stars.
Exactly.
So I want to keep all my 1 stars.
Right. Thank you, JC.
Got it.
So if I change this to a lower rating and run Autocheck again, Mylio will choose a different media now, the one with the higher rating for deletion. But metadata merger will still give you a 5 rating on the media that you're keeping. However, you can change that in the when you go through the next step, and you can see that in the part of the tutorial where JC explained to us already. So it's very simple when there's like one option in the every media has just one option. But what if we give this media a label? So now this media has a multiple items that could be prioritized differently. So if I change the label priority here to be higher than the rating priority.
So now that becomes more important than what I was choosing before.
Exactly. And I run Autocheck. I apologize. I was supposed to drag this one above the rating. So I wanted to have the labels, the presence of the label be important than the rating.
More important than the rating. Got it.
Yes. And so now if I run Autocheck, we get this media with no label, but rating that we wanted to see in the media to be deleted, essentially.
So really the parameter that's the most important to you should be closest to the top.
Right.
Because Malio will prioritize that. So if I want to make sure that the images that get checked for deletion are the ones that have a longer folder path, I could go to folder path, hit longer, and then move that all the way to the top above any other parameter, right?
Yes, absolutely right. So let's restore the defaults here and try another example. So besides this default options that you can reorder and reorganize, you can add a folder as a parameter as well. And this is a very useful option for when you might want to do deduplication of your Apple photos that happened when you upgraded from Mylio, an older version of Mylio to version 22.0. And we have a lot of information on that on our articles and support pages. But if you do have duplicates, this way your your old camera roll folders will be named a particular way, and the new camera roll folder will be named a different way. And you can just choose one or the other. So
yeah, I think this is a question that came up earlier. It's like, how do I get Malio to delete all the photo, or to check for deletion the photos that are in specific folders? So you just add that folder to the auto check?
Yes, and let's do this little example by playing with the same folder that we played on earlier.
Okay.
A folder called Not Organized. So here we have all the photos that were in that folder against the entire library. And now I want to add the same folder as a Autocheck parameter.
Right.
And because I know that I might have duplicates of the photos that are in this folder in my library, but these folders I do not care about, I would actually choose to remove folders that are photos that are in this folder over the other ones. So I would actually choose the remove option right here.
Right, because the other photos are already organized, right? This is
It
your
might be.
non-organized folder. Got it.
Or at least I know that they have been in Mylio longer, so there's a chance that they could have labels or ratings or geotags.
You've done more work on them. Okay.
So if I run Autocheck, what I see is that the media that are in the not organized folder are prioritized for deletion. And other media, like right here, are actually will be kept in my library.
That's awesome. And you can add multiple folders to that Autocheck parameter as well, right?
Yes, it does. It's very possible, and you can reprioritize them as well. Yep. I do not have my library set up right now to show that in a cohesive manner, but yes, you can choose certain, you can actually, let's do this example. I can add a folder that I know that's been organized by year, and it could be a higher priority, and you want to make sure that you want to keep that folder, and some folder that you want to make sure that you don't care about, you do not want to keep, you want to remove, and then you run it. In this case, we'll get the same results, but there's a lot of options and complexities that you can play with to customize to your needs and deduplicate your library. So JC, what's next one on our agenda?
Deletion errors. So sometimes when you try to delete some files, Malio returns an error and tells you that it couldn't delete them. So I wanted to explain to the audience why that might happen and what you can do about it.
Yes, exactly. That's a possible scenario when files are not actually identical duplicates, like JC was telling us earlier that Mylio current deduplication tool only works if you have identical duplicates. But sometimes some files appear identical, and they kind of sneak in through the initial deduplication search, but something about them is actually different. It could be, an example of that could be a media from your Apple library or camera roll that has a duplicate in the camera roll, and one of them was like rotated or cropped or edited. And when those media are deduplicated, they might not be automatically deleted. So let me show you an example here. In my Apple Photos folder, again, I use these filters throughout our presentation today. You see how helpful they are. So in our Apple Photos folder, we have 3 duplicates. And you do see that some things about them are not same. Like this one is black and white. This one is not. This one is rotated, et cetera, et cetera. So they're actually edited outside of Mylio. And normally they would not even be returned as duplicates, but I made sure we get some of those now just for our presentation. So when you attempt to deduplicate them, it will automatically choose some of the items. And then if you try to delete them, you might have a notification appears telling you that we were unable to delete them automatically, and you might have to review review those files to prevent loss of originals. So you would just simply click on this arrow, and it will open up in another view that's called Review Files. In this view, which appears pretty much identical to dedupe interface view, with an exception that the files that were previously selected, now they're not selected, but they have this exclamation mark point on the check instead of the checkbox. And when you click on it, you see that this file could not be verified as a true duplicate, and so you might have to delete it manually. So to do that, there are a couple of ways. You can do it by opening each set and choosing one of the files and pressing the delete icon right here. I do not want to do that right now. But if you do not want to do it one at a time, and if you have way too many to process it manually, you can do another option. So you have to go back to your dedupe and make sure you have the same filters applied, which are actually, if you noticed, we still have the same filter that we were using previously, because this filter is being saved and preserved. If you go from view to view, when you exit dedupe, you still have this filter. When you enter dedupe again, you have this filter in dedupe as well as other views in Mylio.
Yeah, that's a good thing to remember.
Right. So when you do an auto check again on the same set of media, in order to delete them, you would press right click on any of the media and select checked. This will actually select media, all of the media. In my scenario, it's only 3, but you might have hundreds of thousands. Hopefully, it's not that many. And then you would delete them. And this way, you would go around the dedupe automatic deletion process, which cannot delete them, because we want to make sure that your library stays safe and we don't delete things that are not identical.
All right, so let me go back. I want to repeat this because I think people will find this information super interesting. And correct me if I say it wrong. I don't think I will, because I should know it. So when you find a bunch of duplicates in Malio and they get checked for deletion and you try to delete them, Malio by default is not going to just automatically delete them. It's going to go and do a double check on those files and make sure that they are indeed duplicates, right? So it runs that function where it creates, it looks at all the bits and it creates a hash and it says, okay, this file is really a duplicate. But if it finds files that for some reason have changed, like, there's something called bit rot, where if data sits around for too long, sometimes it deteriorates. Or like you mentioned before, if you edit that file outside of Malio and now the file doesn't look the same, it's no longer a duplicate. So Malio is capable of doing a double check and saying, hey, I didn't delete these files like you told me to, because they're not really duplicates. So you might want to go double check.
Yeah.
So, and then you just run dedupe again. If you're sure that there are files you want to delete, you use the function to mark check, and then you do a manual delete. So you're kind of overriding that double check. Yes,
correct. Absolutely. It is there's no fail safe in this scenario, but you're already sure, you can see visually that they are duplicates.
Right.
And you just trust us to do our job, which we do pretty well.
We do indeed. Awesome.
So yeah, I believe this concludes all of our topics on our agenda. So now
absolutely.
We have time for Q&As.
We'll open the floor for questions. Thank you so much, Paulina. That was super helpful. And I don't think I could have explained it to the depth and detail that you did.
I think I got lost a few times, but hopefully it wasn't too confusing, because I know I did.
So guys, do we have any questions from the audience that have not been answered? I see one. And if you have questions that have not been answered, please throw them up there. So Paul is saying, I see that I can select photos without the -1. How do I save the original and not the -1? Okay, so what parameter do you use in your auto check to make sure that the photos with the suffix added, 1 or A or B and C, is deleted or checked for deletion, and that the ones with just the original name are kept.
JC, you want me to demonstrate it on the screen?
Please, yeah, go for it.
Sure. Okay, let me share my screen again. Let's return to duplicate view, and we don't have any results because we're still in the Apple Photos. We're still filtering for Apple Photos. So to see results, I'm going to clear them. Okay, so our user is asking how to remove the ones with -1 over the other ones. So in the Autocheck parameters, we have this option, file names that do not contain copy, -1, -2, etc. So these files are always preferred for deletion. If you really care about that over everything else, you can prioritize this feature to the very top. But that's to your own risk, of course, because there's a lot of other things that you might have done to those -1s. You could have edited them, you could have added certain tags or labels or ratings, and you would probably care about that a little more. But this would be your best option. You would add this to the top and run Autocheck. And here you can see that media that contain the word copy, the copy and the file name are actually check marked for deletion over the media that does not, right here. I hope that answers your question.
All right. So Nancy's asking, so to save the duplicates, we shouldn't use the same vault, right? So if you're moving your duplicates instead of deleting them, you have to move them to a folder that Malio is not aware of. You can move them to the same hard drive that you use as a vault, just move them outside the Malio folder or outside any folder that is linked to Malio. Next question, are the duplicates photos on your devices deleted when you delete them in Malio? Yes and no. So Malio will delete duplicates within the Malio world. But if you have photos like on your camera roll and you're keeping those photos there, those will be deleted based on your free space on this device parameter, not necessarily the deduplication parameters themselves. The important thing to remember is that Malio needs to know that that photo exists. So it has to be part of your Malio catalog. But if you have two computers that have the same photos and they're both connected to Malio and you see the same thing in Malio, when you delete the duplicates on one of those computers, yes, it will delete them in the other one. Next question. You say it merges metadata. What if it's conflicting metadata? That's a very good question.
Yes, you want me to cover that?
If you know the answer, I think I know the answer, but you probably know better than me because you had to test.
Yes, I do know the answer. It might be a little too much for this discussion, but okay, let's try to answer that. So in this example, we do have conflicting metadata. Let's create conflicting metadata for the sake of this. So I'm going to uncheck all and have this medium have a 5-star rating. This media has a 4-star rating, have a label, and let's add some keywords. And this media will have a different keyword. I am sure I cannot type today. Different keyword. Okay. So now when we do auto check, or we can manually select them, it doesn't matter. What happens that the media that stays will inherit metadata from other media. So it was already flagged before. You can see this in gray. So it's going to stay flagged. It did not have a rating, so it will have a higher rating. So by default, Mylio will always prioritize a higher rating. There's also a priorities of labels and categories and other things that Mylio prioritizes over. So as far as it goes for people tags or location tags, it will add people that it's missing. It will never overwrite existing people tags. It will never overwrite a location. It will add a flag over no flag. It will keep a label, I believe, even if a label is different. So there's a lot of little details here. And for those who really want to know, I can show you this little window. It's hidden in settings, calendar, featured photo rank. So this is the priority in which metadata will be merged. So high to low. So if the photo is flagged, of course, the flag will always take a priority over no flag, 5 stars, red, 4, etc. So you can see that the red label is a higher priority than the yellow label and green label and blue, and etc. So this is the little list, which you can also reorder if you choose to, but this gets to be a little very tricky. If you change this and then you're not happy with it, you better remember what you did. So this list is used in many places in Mylio, and you better adjust your priorities and stick to them if you want to do that.
You can, however, restore the defaults, which are pretty good.
Right. That's very good to know. So I hope this answers your question. So metadata is merged according to that list, but in most cases, it's common sense. Higher rating versus lower rating and such.
Yeah, but it's good for people to know that they can decide what takes priority when there's conflicts in metadata. We just use the same parameters that we use when we're featuring a photo in the calendar, which is the setting you just showed.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next question. What if I want to keep both of the duplicates, but don't want them to show up in dedupe in the future? How should I modify the photos so Malio no longer considers them duplicate? Well, the perfect example for this is a photo that you edited. So for example, you might have a photo that you created a black and white version of it. And the original file, because you duplicated the photo in Malio, you created a black and white version. The original file is not black and white. Malio is just showing it to you in black and white. What you would have to do is export the photo with the changes baked in and import it back into Malio. Now it's a new file where it's truly a black and white file. The edits have been baked in. And when you re-import that photo, Malio will no longer consider those files duplicates because you have changed the pixels on the photo itself. The data has changed. So in order for Malio to not consider a file a duplicate, there has to be a change in the way the data is written. And the most typical way of doing that is by changing the pixels. And so basically doing destructive versus non-destructive editing.
That seems like a lot of work, JC, though. But I think there could be, you can, if you really want to commit to a certain way of determining how that media appears to you, you can use either a label or a flag or have all that media in a specific folder. And you can exclude that with the filter.
With a filter, yes, absolutely.
So, yeah,
so if you have duplicates you want to keep, you can give them all a green label. And then every time you run dedupe, make sure that you're filtering that out. Next question. And when you are choosing criteria for Autocheck, that's the only time you check and prioritize for keeping, not deleting. Correct. So auto-checking is where you tell Malio what things to check for deletion. So let's make sure that this is clear. Auto-checks mark the photo that is going to be deleted. Not the photo that is going to be kept. The photos that are not checked are kept. So anything that you tell the auto check mechanism to check will be deleted. All right. I see a question over on the chat side. I assume there's still no way to track deletes from iPhones. Photos tend to sneak into Malio, which were transient, like the price tag I gave before. Well, the easiest way to do that, if you deleted the photo from your phone, but it's still showing up in Malio, but the original is gone, you deleted it from the phone, Malio is going to tell you that you have a lost original. And you can actually see that by going into your dashboard, selecting any device that's fully synced, and that device will list the lost original. So then you can use Paulina's filter that we showed earlier, look for lost originals, and then delete those from your library. You can also they might not be duplicates. They're just lost originals, right? So you click on lost. I don't have an example of that I can show you. Do you?
Yes, I do. Let me, I don't have them in dedupe, but I do have them in just regular Mylio. So right here, you would go to dashboard, devices, and open any of your devices and click on lost originals.
Right.
So
And
this
Malio will
happen.
then show you all the photos for which an original does not exist.
Right.
You can select all or select the ones that you think are not
Mhm.
salvageable and then delete them. So that's
Right.
how you clean up your or correlate your iPhone photos, your camera roll with what's in Mylio. If you
And always to make sure that they're really lost originals, I always like to open the sync panel and see that if this is yellow and I know that it cannot be replicated from anywhere else, because all the other devices that I have, they also either show it yellow, which means they don't have it, or they show it gray as they don't have it as well, then it's definitely lost. And hopefully it wasn't very important to you.
You still have the preview, so you could just leave a photo with a lost original in Malio, and Malio will let you do whatever you can, whatever it can with that version of the photo. So you could duplicate it and create a new original from the lower resolution preview that you had before. All right, let's move to the next question. Please show the auto check procedure again briefly. One criteria I saw is media that don't have -1. That wouldn't be for deletion, would it?
Okay, sure. Let's run through this really quickly again. So we run in our dedupe view with no filters. So we run in opening auto check dialog, restoring defaults. So, okay, so here we have 13 options that we discussed before that are default options. So the higher priority is the edited photo, right? And in this case, the edited photo is the most important to you. So this step in deduplication is trying to determine, Mylio, we are trying to determine which photos are the most important to you. That's why it's called most important. So you, when you say yes, you actually saying that edited photo is more important to you over the non-edited. And same with XMP, and same with the higher rated is more important than lower rated. JC, could you restate again? What was the question exactly? Which option?
So they were talking about the option of the -1s.
Okay, so yes, here this option, it's closer to the end of the list here. And so file names that do not contain
copy or
-1,
yeah.
-2, or etc. will be prioritized for deletion. So you cannot even choose yes or no here. It's
the files that do not contain a -1 will be kept.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you can make this more or less important. So
now you can, if you want to keep the files that have a -1,
you would just
turn that off.
Yeah, you can always turn any options off.
All right, I hope that helped. Let us know if that didn't answer your question. So Peter has a question saying that there's some files on his library that appear to have incorrect timestamp, and is it safe to run deduplication against those files and delete any duplicates? And the answer on that is going to be depending where the time got set up incorrectly. If the time is incorrectly set on the file itself, then you might want to wait and figure out what happened, why your timestamps are incorrect. But if you made a time change in Malio and that metadata is contained in the XMP file, then yes, you can delete your duplicates because you can always correct that by changing the metadata again. But the important thing here is find out the root cause of the problem before determining whether you want to run deduplication against those files or not. Importing a folder any different from just dragging it into the library on the hard drive. Dragging it into the library. I'm not sure how you define the library. If you mean dragging a photo into the Malio user interface, if you drag a photo from your Finder or from Windows Explorer directly into Malio, Malio is going to perform what is known as a copy import. In other words, it's going to add that photo. It's going to replicate that photo. It's going to make a copy of that photo and import it into whatever you designate, whatever storage you designated to contain your Malio library. So that is the difference. When you drag in, you are doing a copy import. You might want to move the photo in, and in that case, you should use the add files scenario, and I'll share my screen and show you. So there's 3 different ways in which you bring your media into your library. I can select the files that I want, the folder that contains the files that I want. So I can go here to a folder that I know has photos. And Malio gives me the option of linking that folder. If I link a folder, Malio is simply leaving the photos where they are, and it's remembering that folder as one of the folders that are now part of your Malio ecosystem. It's cataloging that folder. Anything that you add to that folder will show up in Malio. Anything that you remove from that folder will be removed from Malio. You can copy the files. So if I select that folder and I tell Malio copy the files will stay where they are, and they will also be copied into my Malio library, whatever I designated as my default location, or I can select a new location, or I can move the files. So if I select move, Malio will take the files that were in that folder, move them inside my Malio library folder or whatever place I designate, and they will no longer be in the original place. So a lot of this depends on how you want to manage your folder structure and your file system, and how you want your photos to be either consolidated all in one place, or if you want to keep them where they are. There's rationales for both. So I encourage you to go look at our video course. There's an entire section on importing where we show a lot of this different methods with different examples, and that should clear up what you want to do. Follow-up question, I move a directory in Lightroom within Malio's path, all done without using the Malio interface. Malio should see the new folder and add it, but is something being missed? Oh, somebody just answered. Again, it depends on how you're doing things. But yeah, if you want to, if you're aware of what folders Malio has linked, so if you have a link folder and you put something inside that folder, Malio is going to catalog it and add it to your library. All right, any more questions? We have just a few minutes left. Oh no, actually, we're over time. Time flies when you're having fun. What is the best way to transfer files in from Malio to a different folder in your computer? Well, you just do it right in the folder view. So you can do it in one of 2 ways. You can select an entire folder and drag it to your clipboard here, and then move it into another folder, or you can select any number of files, right mouse click on them and say move to folder, and then navigate to the folder where you want to move them. Again, we have a lot of examples of this on our video course. I encourage you to go read that. All right, so unfortunately we're out of time. Thank you, Paulina, for your time today. I know that you have a lot of testing work that you should be doing.
Improving the new feature for the next version.
That's right. We have more and more features coming with every release. So thank you for taking the time. Really appreciate it. As I said earlier, we will be sharing the recording of the webinar on our community forum or our community site. So make sure you check it out. If you are not a member of the community forum, you can find it at community.malio.com. It'll be right there in the main feed tomorrow, and you can rewatch it. And if you have any other questions, remember, manual.malio.com is where you find our entire manual. There is documentation on every single feature in Malio, lots of examples. You can even download the manual as a PDF. So you could download the manual and put it in Malio. And when you're out on the road with just your iPad, you can open the Malio manual right there on your device and find any answers to any questions that you might have. Also, our community has a video course. You can go there and look for Malio Fundamentals. That is our 9-chapter, 37 video course on all the fundamentals of Malio, how to do everything that you need to do. So lots of content out there for you to explore and to learn how to use the software. Again, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. Thanks again, Paulina. Thank you, Michael and Tyler, for taking care of everybody and answering their questions. And we hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.